JC joins us. JC, what's going on, man? See if JC's got good enough service.
Hey, what's going on, man? Just right here on. Am I in?
Yeah, you're in. You're in. What's up?
Hello. There we go, man. My bad. I'm on I-64 heading towards Lexington from Louisville. I got 3 bars, so I think I'm good for now.
Awesome. Well, JC, again, I appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Safe travels to you and yours. I see you got the puppy in the background, so I'm sure it's a full family affair. But we'll go ahead and jump right into this thing, JC. Talking, South Carolina State, Charlotte, the quote-unquote cupcake part of the schedule is in the books. And you move back into SEC play. The big news, obviously, that took social media by storm last night is the status of Will Levis. The line in Vegas has dropped from 10.5, all the way down to 6. Anything specifically you're hearing on the Kentucky quarterback and his status for Saturday?
I think it's highly questionable if he plays, just based on this is not inside information from Kentucky necessarily. It's more I sort of know who their media are that are connected, and it's sort of an impression I get from what they're saying. Also, the guys in Vegas, Chris, it's their job to learn these things, way before we do, so they can adjust that line. And they all took it off the board last night. It was around 10.5 and came back at 6. And so I tend to think it's, he may go, but I tend to think it's pretty questionable if he plays tomorrow night. I think that's a huge break for the Gamecocks, because if you think about 2022 Kentucky, okay, their whole offense runs through Will Levis. He's making throws. He's hitting the perimeter. He's doing things with his feet. Offensive line, they're not as good at running. Replace him with somebody who hadn't taken a snap in SEC play, who's a redshirt freshman from right here in the state of Kentucky. So, to me, that would be a tremendous advantage for the Gamecocks. If what I consider to be, if not their very best player on offense, one of them, a top 2, at a critical position like quarterback, given their offensive line issues, given the fact I think Carolina can get pressure, given the fact I don't know that they're necessarily going to line up and run it all over South Carolina like many people think. You take him out of the equation, all of a sudden that equation changes, I think, quite significantly for this football game.
Yeah, you mentioned the way, JC, that Will Levis has carried Kentucky, and that's because the Wildcats rank dead last in the conference in rushing offense. How surprising is that statistic to you? Because I tell you, I saw that early this week, and I nearly couldn't believe it, because you think about Mark Stoops' coach football teams, the physicality and the toughness and the run game, right? What their identity is and the way they pushed the Gamecocks around 7 of the 8 last years when they won. How surprising is it to you that Kentucky's taken such a major step back in the running game?
It's somewhat surprising, when with Rodriguez out, you take him off the field, you're going to take a hit. But Cavassier smokes a good back, and right. Levis is running it. And I think that it's one of those things, Chris, where Kentucky has recruited very well on the offensive line the last couple of cycles, right? But as we all know, you don't just step in as a true freshman, no matter how talented you are, or as a redshirt freshman, and replace some of those 4th and 5th year guys they've had and not miss a beat. Plus, they've been banged up. My understanding is their right tackle, the starting right tackle, will probably miss this game this week for Kentucky as well. So they're going to have another new face out there. Now, I think that new face may be a 5-star true freshman that they got out of Indiana this past class. But I think they're a year or two away up front from getting back to where they were. And that, along with Rodriguez, and really sort of while it's kind of the same idea of a system, it is another new system that they installed with their new offensive coordinator after Liam Cohen left last year. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it. Now, can they line up and run the ball Saturday night? Yes. I think that South Carolina has to prove they can stop the run. And you got to get Rodriguez on the ground. He's a tackle-breaking machine, right? But it did surprise me when I started digging in and seeing, 14th out in the whole league. That's not too terribly strong.
You mentioned Rodriguez, JC, and his return. Over 70 yards last week in his first game back against Ole Miss, and a crazy statistic, averaging 7.6 yards per carry in his career against South Carolina. Just talk about how big of a return you think that is for Kentucky, and obviously priority number one, I think, for Clayton White's defense has got to be stopping him.
Yes, you have to tackle well tomorrow night because even if you're in perfect position, even if you try to get him on the ground, he can break tackles. He's one of that's kind of what makes him, Chris, as a back. Quick feet, downhill runner, likes to run with power, and is a excellent elite tackle breaker. I don't know what it is about South Carolina. I don't know what South Carolina did to him. He's from the state of Georgia, so maybe he's mad that they didn't recruit him. But that guy is a Gamecock killer. I mean, he goes off. You could put him up there with Darren McFadden and Matt Jones from Arkansas, and you name your player, Charlie Whitehurst, whoever has had a great career against South Carolina. You can add Chris Rodriguez to that, but he's also running behind the last 2 or 3 years of veteran offensive line that was quite talented, probably top 3 in the SEC. This is just his second game back. Mark Stoops did say this week he's still working his way back into game shape. So at home, night game, he'll be fired up, ready to go. They're going to be relying on him to carry them, I think. The athletic, the idea that they may get in the Wildcat a little bit kind of frightens me. But as we're all scared of that, right? But I think that it's just a different. I mean, there's 11 guys on the field. It's a different offensive unit than maybe the Gamecocks faced last year when Rodriguez basically ran at will at Williams-Brice.
Now, JC, Kentucky's dominated this series of late, right? 7 of the last 8 they have won. I'll ask you this. Are South Carolina fans making too much of this game this weekend? Because you talk to different people, and many folks are labeling this the most important game of the season, and it feels like the season's sort of at a tipping point for a lot of people. But I ask you, do you feel like folks are putting too much stock in this one, or is the pressure and I don't even know the word for it, but is the mood around this game, is it warranted? Is it that big of a deal?
I think it's more of a all right. So yes, I feel like people have made too big of a deal out of it. But I think I said this on the show Wednesday, Chris. It doesn't really matter what I think because it's taken on the life of its own. Right. People are sick of seeing bad offense, and people are sick of losing to Kentucky. I mean, that's just something that drives Gamecock fans crazy. So it's all kind of come to a head right now. If they were playing Texas A&M this week, I don't know that there wouldn't be some cautious optimism. But I think that, here you go again with this team that even when you're a better team than they are, they tend to make you look bad, right? Make you look sloppy, make you make mistakes, make you go through a game where your all kinds of craps happen. And I think the concern is, oh, God, here you go again. With this, and this is not setting up good, and and it kind of magnified everything that was maybe negative against Charlotte and SC State. Just any little thing has been magnified, and I think it's just because of frustration. South Carolina loses Saturday night. Depending on how they look on offense, there may be some soul searching that has to take place, right? But there's still 6 more games, and you don't just throw in the towel after 6. That's only half the season. You go and you try to get it better and try to win and all that. So it's not over. But I think the one thing, too, Chris, is this. People have to keep in mind, how big of a win would it be? Levis or no Levis, just getting a win at Kroger Field or Commonwealth Stadium, whatever you want to call it, would be huge. That hasn't happened, gosh, since 2012. And in that game, Carolina played a terrible Kentucky team. They were down 17-7 at half, and I think the second half they just gave it to Marcus Lattimore 48 times and ended up winning by 21. But it's been a big bunch of frustration, up here. I mean, you go all the way back to 2004 when Mike Rath had to save the day against a bad Kentucky team, and those two 24-17 wins under Spurrier, the one where Steven Garcia got put in the game and played outstanding out of kind of nowhere, and Captain Munderland made a big player. The other one when Savell Newton with the reverse pass at the end to put it on ice, where Ron Cooper got called out in the postgame. I mean, so much stuff's happened up here that, in terms of just weirdly close games, that I think Gamecock fans, and for the program, a big, a nice win, or any win at all, would serve to kind of alleviate some of that frustration.
Yeah, a Wildcat-sized monkey on the back for sure, JC. You can exercise sort of some of those demons up there in Lexington. Let's talk a little bit of Kentucky defense, JC, and just what you see from them, because I'm looking at the numbers. 5th in the SEC, giving up 14.8 points per game. They've given up just 2 passing touchdowns all season long. Now, they are 8th in the conference in rushing yards per game, but I love their linebackers. I know that one of their guys is out this week with injury. And, of course, again, it's a Mark Stoops coach team. They're going to be known for physicality, toughness. What do you see from the Kentucky defense and what South Carolina will have to combat on Saturday night?
Well, I've been calling Kentucky a spider web team because they kind of get you in their web and kill you, right? You look up and all of a sudden, you're like, man, you should be winning this game by 21 and you're tied. And a lot of it's because of their very physical, opportunistic defense. Now, one thing they do not do as well as maybe some other Kentucky teams in the past is rush the passer. Quarterbacks have had time. I think their secondary is probably very underrated, Chris, in the grand scheme of things. I think they're very opportunistic. They play together. They do force turnovers. They'll drop guys into coverage, and you won't see them coming. The most elite portion of this defense, though, for the Wildcats is definitely the linebacking core. And then again, Jaquez Jones, who was probably their best linebacker last year when he came in from Ole Miss, was off to a great start this year. Probably not playing tomorrow night. So who's his replacement going to be? Will that individual be able to come in and play at that high level? I mean, I like a lot of the other guys they have too, not just Jones. I think they're all pretty much elite, but that's another hole that they're going to have to fill tomorrow night. I'll say this. South Carolina has the talent to match up with this defense, no question. And I think, you have to get the ball in your playmakers' hands, just like we've said for every game this year. And if you do that and you execute, and Spencer Rattler does not make mistakes in the passing game, you don't turn it over because they will turn you over. There's no reason why South Carolina can't have a successful game. I'm just not buying that they're running into the Great Wall of Kentucky up here. I just think, yes, it's a nice defense. It's opportunistic. They do have talent. They have future NFL guys. They're banged up at some position, but they don't rush the passer that well. They are very fundamentally sound. So you got to kind of out-scheme them. But player for player, there's no reason why South Carolina can't go up there with the players they have and make enough plays to win the football game Saturday night.
Now, JC, I think obviously the elephant in the room, the thing making fans cautiously, or just cautious, I should say, about the game on Saturday is the offensive side of the football. And, you're able to take some positives from Charlotte and SC State, but what does it all really mean? I'll ask you this, JC. Is there anything that you feel like you can confidently point to that tells you we're going to see something different than what we've seen basically all year on the offensive side, especially against the better competition?
The only thing you can really point to, Chris, is that as us, as content creators and analysts and fans and people that talk it for a living and love it and live it and breathe it outside of the locker room, those games against SC State and Charlotte, barring perfection, we're going to get picked apart. I understand that. That's just part of the game. For players, though, it's a little different. It's kind of one of those things where, hey, yeah, we didn't play a very good team, but man, it felt great to rush for 169 yards. Finally, I've been waiting to do this for 2 years. That team wasn't all that great, but hey, man, I caught a couple of long passes, got back in the flow of the offense like Jaheim Bell last week. With Rattler, yeah, it wasn't great, but I think I made some great decisions, checking out a run plays, getting us in the right play, all that good stuff. You get better at football the best way to get better at football is to play in games against other teams. It's a gladiator sport, especially in college. You don't have scrimmages, you don't have practice games. You're just out there doing it, you know. And so I think there is some individual confidence and individual development over those two games that you can point to say, hey, you know, these guys go up here and play well and play with confidence. They have a shot. Now, I'm not talking about the coaching or the game plan or the play calling or anything like that. When I'm talking about this, I'm talking about just the players, your Marshawn Lloyd, your Juice Wells, your Gene Bells of the world, Christian Bill Smith, Spencer Rattler, the offensive line, Austin Stogner, those guys. Yeah, I think confidence is a big part of this game, and I think with those two half 100 games, you can point to that and say, hey, this could be a good sign.
Now, when you look at South Carolina defensively, JC, what they need to do, again, I mentioned Chris Rodriguez and his success against the Gamecocks, and you look at just last year, you know, Kentucky, and I think we just lost JC. Let's see. Can we get him back? There he is. Okay, we got you back.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Somebody called me. I was like, what are you
doing? All good. I was like, oh, goodness. No, so anyways, on the defensive side, how you expect Carolina to attack Kentucky. You look at last year, obviously, you know, Will Levis being out is a big deal, but you look at last year, Levis isn't what beat them on that side of the ball. It was that rushing attack and Kentucky running for, I think, a little bit over 240 yards or what have you, and Chris Rodriguez ran wild. And JC, I've got just nightmares of Kentucky running backs, from Rodriguez to Benny Snell to all those other guys they've had over the years.
Yeah.
How would you attack Kentucky? Because this really is, you know, I think the most intriguing battle in this football game, JC, is you've got Kentucky, who's dead last in the conference in rushing offense, and then you got the Gamecocks, who are 13th in the conference in rushing defense. So I'll ask you, what gives on Saturday night?
I think if Levis doesn't play, you know, there's no reason why it can't be Kentucky. South Carolina's defense not giving. Look, man, here's the thing, too. I'll get back to this again. It's not the same offensive line that they've had. South Carolina has the same defensive line and the same guys that we keep saying need to step up. They need to step up, not just the D-line, the linebackers. I mean, Brad Johnson and Sherrod Green have been there 175 years, okay? They play Kentucky 17 times and won 2, right? So, I mean, they need to get it out there and tackle well and quit letting this guy make them look bad, right? I honestly think Clayton White, if it's the reserve quarterback, you really need to kind of sell out, stop the run, don't fall for any gadget plays, because I think they'll try to throw some at you early, and then get to the money down and go after him. You remember the one game South Carolina won in this series in 2019? What happened in that football game? Kentucky couldn't get a pass off. They didn't have a quarterback. And they went for 65 yards, right? So it's all 6 carries. But they hadn't figured out to put their receiver at quarterback yet. So, you know, South Carolina won going away because they couldn't move the ball and they got pressure on that quarterback, couldn't complete a pass. It was a 24-7 win in Columbia. You could kind of follow that kind of idea where, you know, you're getting after it, not letting them, refuse to let them run the ball on early downs to set up manageable down and distance play calls, and then force that kid to pass, and then come after him. You know, you may give up a long one or two here and there because they do have good receivers, but chances are, you know, if you can get pressure on him, you can heat him up. It's going to be a long night in the passing game for the Wildcats.
You know, JC, I think what's so interesting, I think a lot of times sports fans, we make too much of numbers and trends and history, right? Because it really don't mean a whole lot what happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Like, we're talking about the 2022 Kentucky Wildcats against the 2022 South Carolina Gamecocks. And so if you look at this game from a tunnel vision perspective, like you just look at these two teams and you look at just everything. There we go. JC Muschamp Hackers, I apologize. Anyways, anyways, if you look at the game just from a scope of this year, these two teams, the numbers that go into this game, and especially the way Kentucky's banged up, I feel like there are a lot of reasons that South Carolina fans should be optimistic about the odds of going into Kroger Field or whatever the name of the stadium is and getting a W. However, it's hard to ignore the numbers and the trends because I feel like we felt this same way year after year after year against the Wildcats. And for whatever reason, every single year, at least 7 of the last 8, the Cats have got the better of you. I mean, you think of that, you think of 8 straight SEC road losses, and the Gamecocks have failed to cover the spread in 7 of the 8 in those. Do you feel like South Carolina fans should be a little bit more optimistic going into this one? Because from what I can tell, the mood of the fan base, a lot of people I see are picking a double-digit loss. And I think there are a lot of reasons that point to, reasons folks should be optimistic that this truly is a toss-up game and that, all things considered, South Carolina should be able to take advantage of a depleted Kentucky team and get a big win on the road.
Oh, absolutely. Now, and look, here's the thing. Yes, I think South Carolina fans should give the team more of a chance. Yes, I was a little stunned by some of the extreme negativity this week. I kind of felt like, maybe you'd be a little ho-hum, but some of it's just crazy, I thought. You'd think they'd lost to South Carolina State, really. And so, yeah, I get that. But at the same time, I don't blame them. I mean, look, one thing Shane Beamer has to do, and this is Shane Beamer's job, right? Because a lot of people lump 18 games of the Beamer era into the Muschamp era, to the last Spurrier year, and it's all the same thing to them, right? They're really separate things. But you see some of the same trends. Can't stop the run on defense. Bad offense. What the hell play calling? That kind of thing. And so, I mean, the same thing's been happening. And so, Chris, I don't blame them. This fan base has had the rug pulled out from under it. Time and time. Job is to stop that and to take advantage of big moments and don't have like any more games like the Missouri game last year where you're sitting there going, wow, that was just a total letdown after beating Florida by 23. Or the Clemson game where you get shut out and embarrassed and give up 1 million rushing yards and, they only pass for 99 yards. It still beats you just like they beat all the Muschamp teams. Those things are what I think this fan base is looking to reverse, okay? Reverse this thing with Kentucky, right? And Kentucky people probably tell you the same thing about Tennessee. Because as bad as Tennessee's been for the last 9 years, they're 7-2 against Mark Stoops in Kentucky. So I don't know what it is about them having Kentucky's number and vice versa. But, there's just certain times where, I mean, you can ask Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley and Brent Venables about Kansas State right now. That's a team that's had their number. So I think solving things like this Kentucky situation, taking advantage of big moments, and tomorrow night is a big moment. It's a chance for the first SEC win, first SEC road win against a team that has a crowd in the stands since 2019 at Georgia. And it's a team that South Carolina fans are sick to death of losing to, and it's a team that's wounded right now. And so it sets up pretty well, right? But we all know that doesn't matter. And sometimes that happens. So, Lady Bree here makes a good point. South Carolina did give that game away. I mean, I talked to some coaches after that game. They felt they should have won the football game at Williams-Brice last year against these guys. So maybe that kind of gives you some confidence going in that, hey, let one slip away last year. Let's go beat them this year.
Now, JC, the interesting thing, you've had extra time to get ready on the South Carolina side of things because of moving your game against SC State to Thursday night. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, JC, because I've gone on record and said that this is the game for me. If South Carolina goes out and looks anemic offensively, I will officially have just lost all hope and faith that Marcus Satterfield can get it turned around. And I feel like I've been as patient as any, if not patient than most. Your thoughts, if that's to happen? I feel like this is the make or break game for Marcus Satterfield. And too aggressive to say?
And you've been more patient than me, actually. I've had a lot of questions about the NFL side of things, the plan. Does this fit this program? why would you ever want to run an offense that takes 18 games to get down pat in college football? There's a lot of questions. And there's some of the things you hear about this, that, and the other. Jaheim Bell, okay, over the summer, he's not a tight end. That was what I didn't say that. Mark Satterfield said that. All right, well, now they're challenged. We got to challenge him to be a complete tight end. Well, I thought you said he wasn't a tight end. I mean, why does a player like Juice Wells have a breakout game? Who I think Juice is special, okay? I know he's special, right? Why does he have a breakout game? And the next game, he gets no targets against Georgia. And it seems like guys will have a big game and the next day they disappear. And I don't understand that. All that said, it can be reversed. Okay. So either my initial thoughts were right about this and it's just a dumpster fire and it's too complicated and they have no business running this style of offense in South Carolina ever, or I'm wrong and it'll start to click and be great, and I'll gladly take wrong at this point. But I think tomorrow night is a big, huge, gigantic test for Satterfield and the offense, because I think people are just sick of seeing bad offense around here. And when you look at the personnel use and you look at the questions as to why the playmakers can't get the ball, and you bring in a Spencer Rattler and you're talking about it's going to take him 5 or 6 games to learn all this. Well, then why'd you bring him in? I mean, why not go get a guy that can, like Max Johnson essentially played in this system last year at LSU. Well, why was Rattler the pick? It just doesn't match sometimes. But I'm willing to throw all that away if they start clicking, because I think they got daggum good players. I think, you look at the roster, you look at the depth chart this year, this is a year to still make some things happen, okay? Given the older players on the team, whatever. So I'm willing to throw it away. But, somebody's right and somebody was not right. And I'll gladly be wrong and trade my wrongness. I've been wrong all year anyway. It doesn't matter. So for a turnaround, a big night on offense tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, JC, you make a great point. There's so much football left to be played in this season, and the Gamecocks sit exactly where we all picked them to be, basically, for the most part, through 5 weeks. Yet the attitude and the overall vibe is just not what we thought because of, like you mentioned, the offensive struggles at this point. But all of that can be solved. All of that can go away, like you mentioned, with a victory Saturday night. And I feel like if I'm picking things up correctly from you, it seems like you're a bit optimistic going into Saturday night. So I'll give you the floor if you want to lock in a prediction, or just I'd love to hear your overall thoughts of, how you think things are going to go under the lights at Kroger Field.
All right, so if Will Levis does not play, I'm going to operate under the assumption he's not. If he does, it could be a toss-up, because that guy's got special arm talent to where you can defend the play right, and he makes this unreal throw, and then that's a touchdown. So, but if he does not play, I think South Carolina's defense has a very good game. I think the offense does enough. I think the Gamecocks could win like 24-13, and that's me being conservative. Honestly, it could be a pretty significant win, given, all these teams in the SEC, Chris, besides Alabama and Georgia, maybe, I'm not even including A&M in this, they can't afford injuries like this. They don't have the depth that Alabama's got. Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia, they've kind of sucked the oxygen out of the room with regards to quality depth. And Kentucky's dealing with just some of their, if you rank their top 5-10 players, they could be without 3 or 4 of them. And home, away, neutral, play it in China. I don't care. You're healthy besides the guys that are out for the year. If you're the Gamecocks, you've got good playmakers. You've got a good quarterback. You keep hearing you got a good coaching staff and good coaching scheme of things. So go up there and make it happen. I mean, take advantage of the opportunity given, because it could turn into something that kind of springboards you for the rest of the year. So I'm picking the Gamecocks. Hopefully I'm not wrong. Like I said, hadn't been the best year picking games for me, but I've been more, even before the Levis news, Chris, I was relatively confident the Gamecocks could come up here and play with these guys.
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up game. I really do, JC. I'll lock in my pick when I record tomorrow's podcast later today. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm on the fence about it. I really am. I mean, I think it's a toss-up game, and I mean, I think we all agree, and I mean, I hate to talk in this sort of negative tone, if you will, but I think we all agree if this team goes up, there's just no excuse to go there and lay an egg. Let me just say that. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for the Cats to cover the original line of 10.5. That goes without saying. That goes without saying. So yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic and positive. And again, you mentioned the injuries, and I just don't know that the Cats can overcome that, but we will see. Last thing, JC, before I get you out of here, I can't get you in here without talking some recruiting. Is there anything, any buzz on the recruiting trail? I know it's kind of right now we're all focused on the season, but anything notable from the recruiting side of things?
Yeah, I'd like to mention this. Our friends over at On 3 got a lot of respect for their national recruiting team. In my career, I've worked with a lot of those guys. I think they really know ball. If you look, Vakari Swain, who's a commitment to the Gamecocks from Carroll to Georgia, is one of their top 10 athletes in the country, a 4-star guy. They moved him up. I think it's a great evaluation. I think Gamecock fans should really pay attention to that because he's good and he's fast. The Nicholas Harbor sweepstakes continues. I know Michigan people feel relatively good, but Gamecock people feel relatively good as well. I think sometimes when you're recruiting a 5-star player and you're recruiting against Michigan and the kid's not from South Carolina, or even if he is, you get a little nervous, because it's the tradition up there and all that. But the Gamecocks are right there for him. Intriguing player out of Florida, Edwin Joseph, who's also a top 10 athlete. Going to visit Carolina, kind of a South Florida late bloomer, sleeper kind of guy. Keep an eye on him, too. I think the Gamecocks are going to make a move there and get him on campus and kind of see what happens. But the good news is, even with some of the quote-unquote negativity or whatever, guys like Pup Howard, who are already committed in this class, Dante Reno, who's the 2024 quarterback committed in this class, they've continued to be positive on social media, to interact with other recruits, and to keep that part of it rolling. And I always tell people, recruits are not fans. They don't look at it the same way. You're better to go out and lose. Your team loses 52-0. While they're all sitting there, than you are for your fans to throw your backup left tackle under the bus on Twitter, because that could negatively impact things more so than a loss. So I think things are going very well. I really still like the offensive line class, like the 2 edge players that they have committed, and I think they got a lot of upside. And I'm very curious to see what they do in the portal. I think probably hit the portal for some receivers again. I know if there is an edge they can get, Chris, they're going to probably go try to get him because that position's thin. Maybe linebacker too this year, but I don't know that for sure. So I think recruiting is going outstanding. And by the way, to your friends here, I'm not driving. I'm in the passenger seat, so
they seem really concerned that you're. They seem really concerned that you're driving. I don't know. I think.
I was like, no, yeah. I am not driving.
Yeah,
so,
that's why.
That's the recruiting, and I still feel very good about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, JC, that's why I love my audience, because they leave no stone unturned. They notice everything. So keep you on your toes for sure. But JC, always a pleasure, man. I appreciate you. Obviously, safe travels as you guys head up there to Lexington, and definitely bring home the dub, man. I appreciate you as always.